Hi guys, and welcome to another video. Today we'll be going through creating a smoke from the particles that we created previously. What we're gonna see today is actually this part, creating smoke from the curve and the particles that we sourced. To see how this is done, I will give you a short representation of the workflow. First, we stopped here creating our particles from the curve. This is how they look. After this part, we will adjust the P scale of the particles so they can have the proper scale, and we will make some preparations for the attributes that are needed for our smoke to be generated. And after this, we will build the pyro solver, which will give us the result for the smoke. We would also use the sphere that we animated previously as a collision body, and we will use the sphere as a velocity force that we're gonna apply onto the volume, onto the smoke. And this is a custom velocity field that is built outside of the pyro solver, and this velocity field can be used as an input for the smoke. So to generate all this, we will start from the beginning. And first of all, the P scale that we mentioned for the particles. If you want to see the proper scale that each particle has, you can go to the display options if you click on D on your keyboard, and you can go to the geometry tab, and here instead of points you can go and check the disks. This will give you the proper representation of how big the P scale is for each particle. So in order to change this, you can do it throughout the Wrangler, and we can type some simple code. So we would define the P scale by creating a channel which will let us guide the particle scale as we like them to be and as large as we like them to be. So when you create this, you can continue building the things that we're gonna need for the pyro solver. In order for you to know what's needed for the pyro solver, you can build one and just see the sourcing tab. Usually what you're going to need for the pyro solver to work is at least to build some density field with some noise and some variations in it. We will also build a temperature field attribute that will be also used to get some more variations into the smoke. And at the bottom you can see that we also are using the velocity field. The field that I mentioned, that's going to be a custom field outside of the pyro solver created. So in order to start and to create some attributes, we would go and search for the noise attribute node. This node will create, by default is the color, but we will use this as a density field. I will change the naming at the end when I adjust the look of the noise that I want. I will take the min and maximum values for the noise, and the element size you can lower it as you prefer. And I would make a source that looks something like this. This source you can animate it throughout time, so you can even click on the animated noise, so you can have different noise throughout the time. but because this is a moving body, I will switch off the animation noise for now. I don't need it. And you can in the attribute name you can write the name density, and because it is not color anymore, you cannot see it in the viewport, but you can build marker for this. You can see that I've already built markers previously, density marker, and color visualization node that you can use it for representing your noises and to see how they look. You can click it on and off, and you can create new ones at the plus sign, and you can take the color because it's a color representation and visualization. The name is density. The label you can also put it as density. This is the density 3 because I've already built it before. And the attribute, this is the most important field. You have to fill it. It's the same name as you used it here, so it's density. I will not create it this time because I already built it. After this, I will copy paste the node. Just make sure you name everything properly. This is the temperature. As we mentioned, we need density, temperature, and velocity. And we will change the attribute name to temperature. I will change the settings a little bit. I will make the element size a bit smaller, and I will use the animation noise. Whenever you use something that is animated and dependent on time, you will get this small icon on the bottom. This makes the cache up until everything after this node to be time dependent and to be calculated each and every frame. So whenever you're using the animation, make sure you're using it as way lower in your network so that not many nodes are affected by it. I don't need it that much, the animation noise, so I will switch it off. As I mentioned, it's moving body. And now I can link it directly to the pyro solver, because if you see the first input, it says requires volume for sourcing. In order to do this, you have to rasterize the particles and convert them, the attributes, and convert them to volume. You can use the density, temperature, and velocity field that we have it from the particles movement. Because the particles are moving, they have the velocity field. As you can see, there's the representation of them. So I use the velocity field as an input as well. The voxel size, you can determine how big you wanted it, as it reflects also on the resolution on your pyro solver. Don't make it too small at the beginning. It's better to work with lighter volumes at the beginning so that everything can go a bit smoother. Maybe something around 0.05, and I'm almost always linking those two. So I go to the voxel size attribute, I copy the parameter input, and I go to the pyro solver. Inside the setup, there is also voxel size, and I will paste the relative reference. So now the both attributes are linked, and voxel sizes are linked. Now that we have everything set it up, we can see the creation of the smoke. First of all, what we can notice is that the smoke goes upwards. This upwards movement is made by the buoyancy, which is set it up by default on 1. We can kill the buoyancy and just let the particle velocity move the smoke. We can also lower the movement of the smoke from the particles and be less affected by the velocity. We can also crank up the density to 3 maybe. Yes, it's better, and maybe a bit less temperature. And the acceleration. Okay, now we can also lower the voxel size if you want to see it a bit more with a bit better resolution, and we can also scale down the particles if needed. Or we can also make them larger. You can play with the settings and get the okay. So after the pyro solver, there is pyro bake volume, which is used in a way as a shader in viewport. Here you can change the color of the smoke. You can change different kind of representations. Its density, you can play with it, making it denser. You can also play with the shadow color here and choose your best representation for the viewport. This node, if you don't uncheck the box for assign material, it will take this one as your material for the render. So make sure if you're using outside material to uncheck this box. This is only for the viewport purposes. And now we can go and build the custom field that is made outside of the pyro solver. For this, we will need to create a bounded box that will surround the whole animation of the sphere. And for this, if you want to use a bounded box, you can use the, for example, I want to capture the whole area that the smoke occupies, and I want to do that just by expression. So the BB box into the x-axis. Now you can choose from which object you want to take this information from, and we want to take this from the pyro solver 2. And after this, just add the comma, and after the comma you can see also like a pop-up window, which is like a helper. You can notice that here I've written all the possibilities that you can fill the after comma part. So it says that you can take the size of the X that this object has, in our case the smoke. So that's exactly what I need. I don't need the minimum or the maximum. I just need the whole size of the volume that occupies by the x-axis. So I need to write the x size, and you can see now that if you click on the attribute on the size, you can see that now we have number. And if I click on the box as a template, you can see that it occupies the smoke density, the whole size of it, by the x-axis. You can copy this, paste it, make sure you change it because we are in the Y field with big Y, and do the same for the Z-axis. And if you can see our box change, now you can see that the both of them are not centered to each other. So we can also use an expression for the center. It's called centered for the explanatory So I will do the same. I will take the smoke, the pyro solver 2, and I will write comma, and now you can see that after the comma comes dx, dy, or dz. So you can write for each field the necessary axis, the y, and the z axis. And you can see that the box moved. Because this is the pyro solver creates something that is changeable by time. The smoke will change our box all the time, which is not what we need. So after doing this, you can easily just break up the connections by holding the Control Shift and just left click on your mouse on the attribute, and it will break up the connections with the smoke, and your box will stay with the size and the center as you wanted it. Because I know that the sphere has the longer movement throughout the z-axis, I will change the size of the z-axis so that we can occupy a bigger area. But don't go wild with this, because we're going to fill this box with points. To fill it with points, you can use the node point from volume, and this will give you it will fill the whole area with points. So that's why it's really important to not go so outside of the boundaries and the necessary field that we want to use, because this node can get quite heavy. I will generate point separation of 0.2 so that I can have less points here, and I'm gonna give it some jitter so that we can lose the pattern. Maybe even 25. I think it's enough. And now there is something that we can do to create this custom field. And in order to do this, we need to transfer the velocity that this sphere has while moving towards this z-axis. And we want to transfer that velocity onto the points that are inside this box. To do this, just create the attribute transfer node. If you see this node requires geometry to transfer attributes to, that's the points that we created from the box. And the other field is geometry to transfer attributes from, which is actually the sphere. If you look at the sphere now, and if you turn on the velocity display option, you will see that we don't have the velocity onto the points. To get that, you need to capture the trailing, the motion of this sphere throughout the scene, throughout the 3D space. And this trail node has an option for you to compute the velocity between 2 or more frames. Now that I turn it to the velocity, you can see that right away we have the velocity onto the points assigned. And now you can put it as the second input and transfer those attributes from the sphere onto the points into this box. As you can see, they light it up with blue color from the velocity. Here in the attribute transfer, you can write exactly what you want to take. So we are taking the velocity with small b. In the conditions, you can change the distance threshold to something lower. As you can see, the circle around the sphere is affected right away. So you can choose whichever you want, and you can rasterize this attribute, because that is what we need for the input, as we did it here. We will rasterize this attribute, so we say the velocity field, and we can merge it all together with the sourcing particles to go into the pyro solver altogether. In order for you to see, because now it's not really visible what's going on, there is a visualization trail volume trail, sorry. So in order to get this, you need the points that need to be trailed, and this is the volume velocity field, and if you switch it on, you can see how it's affected. You can also see how large is the field if you're affecting it. You can choose your own version of it. You can also noise this. For example, you can add attribute box and just add some noise to the velocity. We can have a curl noise, which we're gonna add to this velocity position. We take the point position. We are taking the velocity field. We add the noise to this, and you can put it to the velocity output, and you can see that those forces now have a certain noise applied to them. You can put the frequency a bit up, and you can lower the amplitude. It depends what effect you want at the end. So I'm going to put just a little bit of variation that we're going to have from the ball movement, and like this we can see how it's affecting it. So you can see that this force from the sphere is quite strong, and it affects the smoke strongly. So you can adjust this by going to the lower sourcing into the sourcing window, and just adjust the velocity. You can play with this. And yes, this is how you get the smoke. If you want, before running it at the end, you can go to the pop network and just increase the number of points that you're creating. But don't go overboard with this. You can go to 10,000 just to have a bit more resolution at the starting point. And you can also decrease now the voxel size, so you can have a better representation. Be sure that you can capture in your with your attributes the size from the p-scale from the particles, and that's enough. And now you can start simulating and creating your smoke. Usually there's some small adjustments that I make for each smoke. Usually what I do is lower their size while caching without lowering their resolution, because those caches, especially for smokes, are quite large, and you can easily run out of memory. So in order to do this, because now we're using only the density field, we don't need the temperature field. Usually I'm blasting the density field. So everything except for the density field will be blasted, or you can use it as density and just delete the non-selected. So you will end up having the density only here. After this, I convert it into VDB. The VDB is useful because it captures only the place where there is density, and all the rest of the surrounding is without any voxels or any information. So it's like empty spaces, and it lowers the size of the caching. So make sure you convert it to VDB. And there is this primitive properties. This one has a tab at the end, it's called volume, and it has the VDB option. At the bottom you can convert it to write it as a 16-bit float and create an out node and name it as you want it. I usually always make them black with rounded circles so that I can know that it's pretty distinctive color, the black one, and you can see it right away where your stuff are ending. And this one you can cache it now and prepare for rendering. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.